Well, welcome to Cambridge Inside Out.
Quick.
I'm Robert Winters,
Judy Nathans.
and today's March 19th, 2019, right?
Oh, 1919. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I have it on good authority from the almanac that tomorrow was it 5:38 or something like that is the equinox. So
Which means spring.
we are not quite spring yet, but we're
Yeah.
about to be spring,
Yeah.
to be sure.
Yeah.
So we actually went on a bit of a walk in around Fresh Pond and
Yeah.
Mount Auburn Cemetery, one of our sort of scheduled walks, which was
Yes.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
My first leading a hike and walk for a little while, so that was kind of
Yeah.
getting back in the swing of things. So that was pretty cool.
Are we going to do all? No, we're not doing all.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, it was. It was Fresh Pond and then the cemetery.
Yeah, it's actually
A lot of history in that cemetery.
There's a lot of history in the cemetery, and what I was telling people on the walk, and I tell people all the time, is that you can pretty much pick a theme or a particular
An era?
kind of individual,
Yeah.
like political
Oh, yeah.
figures, artists, poets, writers, whatever,
Find them there.
and then you can plan out an incredibly interesting walk through the cemetery. Just
Was yours planned out? I mean, you had a few people
somewhat,
you like to point
yeah.
out.
I mean,
More,
I'd like to plan out a few different thematic walks, but the things that I know a few things about are some Cambridge history and some major political figures. Like Charles Sumner is the one person that always kind of really gets me, and Edward Everett, the featured speaker at the Gettysburg Address.
Plus all those other positions he held.
All the many positions he held, yeah, oh yeah. So anyway, it's always a great time.
Is that what
and,
Everett, Mass. is named after him? Right?
I'm not sure. I think it may be his family is
Or
from there,
it's
so
through the
it's
family,
intertwined
yeah.
with the family. I believe that is true. Yeah, but anyway, it was pretty great. To the best of my knowledge, there are no new candidates have emerged since
Oh,
last
since
week.
we last, so that's how many then?
Well, and
potential?
presuming the 9 incumbents are still there,
True.
then there are, and Adrienne Musgrave, who said she's in,
Right.
and she's raising money, so I can see
Okay.
she's active. I was looking at that today, and then it was these
Charles Franklin? Is he
Charles
the current?
Franklin. He's actually issued a press release today,
Oh, okay.
and then there's this other fellow, Javon Sabrina Wheeler or
Is
something
he
like
the
that.
MIT connected?
No,
someone
that
else?
person hasn't emerged and may never emerge. We'll never
Okay.
see, but he's just somebody who said. And then it was Nicola Williams, from the Carnival, and
And they-
also related to the Harvard Square.
And is she actually declared? Or is she just raising?
She's pulled papers. She's
Pulled
opened a
papers.
bank account.
Okay, which means.
Yeah. Well, I mean that means it seems to be happening.
But
Any
people
candidate.
can end up not running.
Oh
if they
yeah,
do that.
any candidate can pull out all the way. Even after you file papers and the election commissioner approves them, you still have, I think, 16 days to say, "Oh my God, I'm crazy.
Oh.
I'm having, buyer's remorse." So,
Oh, so if you pull papers, you have to, if you don't say you're not going to do it, you have to
well,
get
it's not.
penalized if you don't
pull the
end up-
papers at the beginning of July.
Yeah.
You submit them by any time during July before the end of July.
And if you don't submit
then,
them, are you just dead in the water? Or do
Yeah,
you get
well, some people don't submit them.
Okay.
They're candidates. And it's actually interesting, and I'll do it again this year. There are candidates, or there are people who pull papers who don't submit them, but then you kind of know that they're thinking about it, and then a year or so later, or 2 years later, they may emerge and actually do it.
But they have to resubmit, don't they?
Oh yeah,
time?
absolutely. But the thing is that at least it gives you a little bit of insight as to who's considering one day doing
Right.
it too.
But
So
unless they commit by the end of July or whatever.
then
you
they're
said,
off the
right?
ballot,
They're
unless
off
they
the
want to be
ballot.
Marjorie Decker and do a
Ah.
writing campaign, which is not advisable.
Although she
Right.
was successful.
Yeah. By the way, I think I did get a request from the election commission people to do some experiments to determine. I did some experiments with the 2015 ballot data to
Oh,
show
if you
what
were- yeah.
what would the effect be if you in fact limited the number of choices
Oh, to 15.
people could have to no
Yeah.
fewer than 15.
Right.
Right, and I would actually argue if you're going to truncate it to 15. There's no reason to
Right.
more really.
Yeah.
And I ran it with the 2015 data, and there was not a single ballot switched by
Interesting.
limiting the choices a little bit.
Yeah.
So I actually think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, with our system, when you get to be even 8 or 9, it's not going to.
Once you get down and past about 10,
3 or-
12, maybe
Yeah.
if you want to really be
But I
liberal
mean, for
about
that
it.
vote to count, it's really,
It's so
the ones in the very beginning might.
yeah. It's
yeah.
primarily the upper choices that matter.
Right, yeah.
The deeper choices might matter when they're just sort of filling in the last few seats.
Well, that's
but
true. If they say got a candidate that maybe had like 200 votes, but then they go to somebody else and maybe.
yeah, so it's usually at the very, very
Yeah.
end that you even see them expressed. But even there, the
Right.
deep preferences are usually not the ones that get expressed.
True. Good point.
So
Yeah,
so
they
anyway.
would have been their 1 and 2.
Yeah,
rather than
they
a
tend
1
to
and
just
14.
elect the people who are probably going to get elected anyway.
Right, yeah.
So, but anyway, I think the election commission they're thinking ahead, and I think and the staff, and I think they want to make sure that should they have to make a decision to limit the number of choices, that in fact it's not something that should be considered controversial.
And would they do that by what? How would they do that?
It's actually one of those things, many things, if you want to change the way we do the elections, would require a home rule petition to the legislature. This is the one thing that requires nothing other than a majority vote of the election commission.
Yeah, but then how do they decide who gets to be in the first 15?
They don't. Voters decide. No, they're not. no, no.
I see.
Oh, I see. You're thinking. No,
so
you don't
all
limit the number of
names are
candidates.
listed, but you only rank
Right.
1 to
Okay.
15.
So let's be clear
Okay.
about this. Is that
I was confused. about
voters
that.
would not be permitted to rank
I
more
see.
than 15 should the election
But all
commission take
names
such a
that
vote.
people that submitted and are running
They
are
can
on
run.
the ballot.
If you
Okay.
file to be a candidate, you are on the ballot. There's no question about it.
So you could actually pick number 22 as long as they're not more than 15 altogether?
The thing is what we have done up to
Oh, actually, it's all mixed up anyway.
since the computerization of the
Yeah.
elections. Because prior to
not
that, you had to write in
alphabetical.
the number. You could have written in any number you want.
Right.
You could have given somebody a 500. Wouldn't matter, but you could do
Oh,
it. The
but
thing
it's
is,
not that way anymore.
no. But so the thing is, what they've done if they had 16 candidates, there were 16 bubbles. If there were 23 candidates, there were 23 bubbles, but they get really close together. Right?
Oh, because, okay.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of at the point where if we got more candidates than we
Can fit on the ballot?
than we had, like, let's say election or so ago.
Yeah.
We hit that break point where we couldn't fit them on the ballot.
Mm.
So you could fit the candidate names on the ballot
Yeah.
by running it longwise, but you'd have to limit the number of choices just to be able to do it on a standard ballot.
So,
And-
but it said the situation can be resolved, though.
Well, the thing is
Yeah.
by limiting to 15 choices, you really there will be absolutely no change in the election, and I can guarantee it, and I'm going
Right.
to prove it. But so I only have it for the one election, and I'm going to do it for some more elections to really
Okay,
make a
but
strong case.
I'm being slower because I'm tired. I'm still confused. So you have all the names, and each ballot's different because they sort the names out, so they're not
It's
preferenced to
yeah,
somebody
there's
number
you have
one,
the
right?
you have the barrel
Okay,
roll.
and
yeah.
you have a bubble, and you get to put off only up to 15.
Only up to 15.
So it could be 23 names, but only up to 15.
That's right. You just
Okay.
rank your top
So
15.
you really have to think a little more, maybe.
You know,
Find
honestly,
the people you want.
but what I can say, since
Yeah.
I've looked at this ballot data enough to
Yes.
go mad,
See it in your dreams.
right? The truth is that the most common number of rankings a voter expresses is 3.
Really?
And the-
When they can do 1 to 9?
Yeah, and the
Surprised.
median, that's like the mode.
Yeah.
The median is about 5, and the mean is about 7, because what happens then is there are enough people who vote for like 19 that it
So
skews
it's-
things.
Okay.
See, so the thing is that most people are kind of voting in anywhere in the 1 to 9 range, let's say.
Yeah.
There are relatively few people. I mean, you watch it; it drops like a stone if you count the number of voters who express more than 9 votes. It drops
Yeah.
precipitously,
Yeah.
and by the time you're getting down to the number of people who rank all the candidates,
Yeah.
it's just a few percent.
Yeah, wow.
So, it's really it would be an inconsequential change.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it would, some might view it as controversial, so, you'd have to make the case. So, anyway,
If you really want somebody, you vote for them.
that's it.
That's
Yeah,
it.
give them a good rank, high ranking.
You can't,
Absolutely.
vote
So,
for
so anyway, we'll see if this may not even come to pass. There may
True.
not be a need, right? So far, I know there are 9 incumbents. If you assume they're running, plus there's 4 others that are absolutely in. I think maybe 5 others really.
And probably anticipate at least another,
so
6 more maybe.
Right. So my sort of current head count is it's probably more in the 16 to.
Oh.
But the thing is, there's going to be more to come, and
Or maybe because there's no open seats. Where
Yeah.
last time there were all those open seats.
and honestly,
yeah.
and then there will be will be sometimes
The
called
perennials.
the perennials.
Yeah.
Right, we'll have a few of those,
Mm-hmm.
and then I imagine there'll be a few issue candidates. So, so whether it's bikes or trees or
Better Cambridge.
climate
Yeah.
or whatever. So, in addition to the candidates who are sort of the prime timers for that,
Mm-hmm.
there'll probably be a few others, and so we'll see. The more the merrier, I suppose. But
Yes.
at some point, it gets just absurd. But we'll see. Anyway, but no news on the candidate front,
All right. Well,
actually.
you'll keep us posted.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
usually the first to know, although people could find it out, but who bothers? You're the one who
Right.
find out.
Well, I mean, it's just one of the little jobs I've sort of taken.
Yeah, that's nice. People rely on you for
Yeah.
that.
So we did have a city council meeting last night.
Yes.
And it was not really that much
Yeah.
went on.
I heard a little bit in the beginning because I only watched it today, and then I skipped through. There wasn't that much, although public comment seemed to be an hour.
You know what really happened was is
The
that
Bike Safety Ordinance.
right. So
Cycling Safety.
there's this lobby that has basically been what they really wanted to somehow write it so that nobody would have any choice at all, and that you will put in protected lanes as a matter of law, and that's it. But that would have been complete violation of the city charter.
Yeah.
Because, for example, if the city manager is running the city and the city departments are implementing what the manager wants, to have the city council pass an ordinance that dictates that the city manager
Yeah.
shall manage in the following way
It's not
is a
allowed under-
violation.
yeah.
So it would be challengeable. So you have to factor in a little bit of wiggle room. So
I thought it was only when they were redoing the street. that
right.
they-
So I think, and again, it's no point running through all the details of
No.
it. But the basic idea is that people who are hot about having this whole network set in place basically want it to be that every single time a street that's part of the plan gets any work, that it must absolutely have this
separated, not just a
separated.
bike lane, a separated,
Right.
dedicated,
Right.
like on Western Ave.
But the problem with that is
Yeah.
that in
Or Brown
fact
Street.
there are some streets because of
Can't accommodate it,
it really cannot be accommodated in any
Yeah.
reasonable way.
even without the parking.
Right. So the
So,
thing is
yeah.
that, I mean, some of the zealots will say, well, that's just tough. You'll have to get
Yeah.
rid of everything, ban
Don't
the
drive a
cars
car,
as long
right,
as we
yeah.
get our bike lane, right? So there is some wiggle room in there, certainly for Commissioner of Public Works and Director of Traffic and Parking and the city manager to make some quality decisions. The difficulty, I think, will be that then the manager would have to basically make this almost like a case why, in fact, it has to be done a particular way, and then that in itself will then become a controversy. So it's kind of flipping the burden of proof the other
So where
way.
does it stand legally right now? Is it
It
gone
was
through
passed to a
ordinance?
second reading last night.
Okay, so we'll go before the
and
ordinance
then
committee?
I think it was at the ordinance committee.
Right, you
so
said
it's-
second reading.
well, when
front-
you come out of committee report,
Okay.
and then the recommendation is passed to a second reading, and then it's in the queue for 10 or more days later for the city council to ordain it.
So it's already gone through the ordinance
It's already gone
process.
through it, and it's, I mean, one of the sore spots I have about the current council is that I don't think they think very, very critically. So if a group which has a little bit of political clout comes through and says, do this, do that, they tend to just do this, do that. And I don't know that they have sufficient discussion about the possible downsides of things.
Oh,
So,
I don't know.
I mean, even when they did that, like with the tree
Yeah.
cutting moratorium, the fact that they even slowed it down to have that discussion itself became a controversy.
True.
Which I thought really said something about
Yeah.
the nature of the council, which is more just, we got to do it now because the lobby says we got to do this now. And, I hope that can change. But
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a matter that was what brought most of the people up for
Yeah.
public comment.
Yeah.
And they stayed until it was past the second reading, and they went. They honestly didn't seem to have a whole lot of interest in anything else. So that was there was actually one other thing, it's sort of bike related, that's I find interesting. So every morning when I take the bus down to Kendall Square on my way to go to work, there's there's this thing they call the eco totem or the bike totem. It's a
Oh yeah,
it's a
that's
bike
the first
counter.
I'd heard about it now.
Yeah, it's been
You
in,
see it, you can see
oh
it.
yeah, it's right in the middle of the, it says divided road on Broadway down near
So
Kendall
it
Square.
doesn't photograph you, it just does
I don't actually know how it does
I'm
the
sure
detection.
it doesn't. If Kelly's behind it, he can't photograph you.
That's
I don't
right.
think.
But it does detect the bikes.
Right,
Yeah,
somehow
and
through
you
the-
see
yeah.
this counter, whatever. I
Okay.
don't really know how it does it. And I also can say with some certainty
Yeah.
that it's not perfect because I just happened to be thinking about it
Yeah.
last week, and the 68 buses going down the road, there were
Yeah.
no bikes on either side
Okay.
in sight. And as we passed the totem, it clicked. And went
From
up,
the bus.
It
Wow.
went up +1, yeah. So
Interesting.
I don't know what it's detecting.
That's interesting
you know.
because someone brought up that. Well, how about the scooters? How is it going to detect that kind of stuff?
Well, I think any measuring device
Yeah.
is not
Subject.
100% perfect.
They thought it was the pressure of a tire.
They said something
I don't
about the
know.
pneumatic pressure
Yeah,
of the
but a
tire.
bus.
Yeah, that's why
Hello.
I went, that's a little
It should
strange.
have been a lot
right?
of clicks. You know?
Right.
Wow.
So,
That's interesting.
on the other hand, a bus tire, it may be a big tire, but you spread all that air over a
Well,
bigger
obviously
surface.
they have to look at these statistics and see.
Yeah,
if they're
all right. So I think so. Part of the order was to maybe put more of those counters in other places to get
Oh.
better data on bicycle usage. There was one actual phrase in the city council order that I did find interesting, and maybe it sounded more like a Craig Kelly type of phrase, which is it seemed to indicate that
I think that was his order, wasn't it?
he was but not the only. And in it seemed to suggest that the data suggested a flattening out of bicycle use over the last couple of years, because there had been these very steep
right,
increases
yeah.
since they started doing all these various
Yeah.
bicycle promotion things. And then it seemed to be like from 2014 to now or something, there seemed to be some leveling off. And I've read that and I thought, yeah, that's kind of what I expect would happen.
Why?
Well, I mean, the truth,
Well,
there is
explosion of blue bikes and everything else.
and there could be an explosion of blue bike, but the thing is, there are certain natural limitations to certain things. For example, the weather in around this area is not perfect all year round, and not every day is a sunny day. People do have other things they have to do, so commuting by bike might not be perfect for them.
Maybe it's also the Uber and Lyft.
And
is
I think
really-
that the
yeah.
presence of Uber and Lyft, and
It's
as
really
Craig Kelly
true.
would point out,
Yeah.
some people are using, scooters, whatever. There are not many that
Yeah, I
I
don't
see yet
see
in
any,
Cambridge. I
yeah.
see some, but not that
Yeah,
many.
Yeah.
I imagine the Uber Lyft is probably a big factor. Also, if what people say is true, that Cambridge is becoming more affluent, then with affluence becomes
Think that's coming true. Of course,
you know,
it's true.
well, I mean, it is, but the
Got
thing
pockets, but it's pretty.
but what it also means is that people have the capacity to just take an Uber, and they're not obliged. They don't feel the necessity necessarily to bike for economic
well, they're not going
reasons.
to bike at night to go to a nightclub or something.
Right, for that as
yeah.
well. So my sense is that no matter what we do, there's probably some kind of natural leveling
Yeah.
off that happens, and I don't know what the percentage is at. But I think the total bike commuting fraction was only like 7%, and I think, and I once asked one of the city officials, well, what are you targeting? What do you think it'll
Yeah.
eventually rise to? And they get a little evasive with that, but
Yeah.
I figure if you can get up in the 15%, you've done pretty well. 15% is a lot better than 0.
And the reality is, you can walk a lot of Cambridge.
And I think that's
And it's
the real
quicker
reason.
too, and safer
Yeah.
in some ways, depending on the weather.
Yeah.
And there's buses, and there's
Exactly.
subways,
So,
and there's, if you belong to Harvard or
Yeah.
there's shuttles, like there's one right there.
yeah.
I don't know
So,
what that is.
so I think that's the truth
Yeah.
is that the
Yeah.
the mode share, as they like to
Yeah.
say, of cyclists
Plentiful.
has a natural
Yes.
limitation for a lot of reasons. One
Right.
is some people still want and need to use motor vehicles. There's also your conscience can be clean in if you have an all-electric vehicle, so you don't have to feel like. Remember the sign that you see on a bicycle that said "one less car"?
Yeah.
Well, that person that right now is probably driving one of them Volts.
Right, but they also have a driveway where they can park it.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's right,
you still have
and
to
you
get a
don't have
parking
that.
space. Yeah.
Actually, I think the biggest argument that promotes bicycle usage for commuters is may well be just the inability or expense in parking a vehicle at your destination, so that's where
well, that's also
limiting.
where Uber and Lyft comes in. Too.
That's exactly right.
But,
And what's the future going to be like if we have driverless vehicles
now
or
they're
whatever?
talking about those flying things too.
Hover? We're going to go
I
take
don't know. I
hovercraft?
heard something.
Drones?
I don't know. People, there's like they did in the Jetsons or the Flintstones. What was that? Porta packs. Seriously,
I remember
they're
the
working on
Bell
this.
rocket belt.
Yeah, well, they're working on that somewhere, and I'm
Oh,
thinking,
my.
oh my, yeah, really.
This is going to be a very, very strange world.
Walking.
Yeah.
Hello. 2 feet.
Actually, another item that was on the agenda that I think it was one of the committee reports, so it made it through. Councillor Toomey exercised his charter right
I
on
know.
all 5 items of
On
the
the city manager's agenda.
which
we
is
don't know why, but
well, it's of little consequence because there was none of the items were like pressing
Anything.
business, so it just
Yeah.
gets kicked down for another week. So what,
Yeah.
right? What's the big deal, right? Actually, one of the items on the agenda that got kicked down the road was they have every year they do maybe it is every year they do this resident survey.
oh right, yes.
It's a combination of phone survey and online
was that the city
survey.
manager's agenda, or was that
City
another
manager's
thing?
agenda
Something else got charter
it was
righted.
the top item.
Right.
And I look at them every year, but I've sort of reached the point where I actually don't derive much of, if any, useful information from them.
Are these
anymore.
online? I'm trying to remember if I did it. Did you? Do it?
I didn't do it this year, but I've certainly been called in the past at least
Well, 'cause
once
you have
a
a
few
landline,
times
yeah.
for that.
Some of us don't have landlines anymore.
Right. And, and it's interesting because, the one point I make is that they say, well, what's the number one priority? And it says affordable housing. But if you look at the survey and the survey instrument, they don't,
How does it ask it?
that's the question.
Ah.
So the thing is that if, say, is affordable housing important? Is this your number one priority?
So they're telling you.
People might say yes. But the thing is that there's no way to know, based on the survey instrument, whether they were saying, I'm dissatisfied with the fact that I'm currently paying high rent in my apartment and I wish my rent was lower.
Yeah.
Or versus, I really, really hope the city builds more public housing,
Right.
which is a
big
very
difference.
different
well,
thing.
that whole word affordable, I hate it because
I'm
going to be looking for something, and affordable. What's affordable? I'm
think-
going to be paying a lot more because I want to stay in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Maybe have the resources, but that's the reality.
Yeah, I would.
It's
I
not
would.
affordable.
I would say that nearly 100% of the population of Cambridge wants their housing to be affordable.
Well, if you live and own in where you live and happen to
Then
buy
it
it
is.
a long
Then
time
it
ago,
is.
it is affordable.
Yeah, that's right. That's
But if
right.
you're trying to rent now or buy now, and you are middle income or even you can't do it. So
Right, it's really
the
difficult.
housing is available
Right.
for subsidized and inclusionary, all that, but you have to. There's income requirements.
Right.
So
But the
where
thing
is
is-
the middle? That's what I'd like to know.
Right, but many of the people who are responding, basically what they may very well be saying, well, I want there to be some mechanism through which
Yeah.
there could be, that could lead to more reasonable rents being available, even if it's in market rate housing.
Right. But those are people saying this is what I'd like to see the city do, not necessarily referring to themselves.
Well, the thing is, they're basically
Yeah.
saying, what do you put as a high priority? That's all. So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's for that reason, and the kind of the ambiguity of the way questions are posed
Yeah.
in surveys is the reason why I find them to be virtually.
Is it so the results are
without
out? I
value.
didn't look at it.
I mean, I looked at it, but honestly, it's
Is
just
that the
not a
only?
lot to
Is
be
that the
said.
top issue?
I think it's the city just tends to do it, and then they look at what they like, and they say, "See, everybody loves us."
Well, what's the sample though?
Right.
How many respondents?
About
did
400 or
they get?
500. Yeah.
What, 400 or 500 people? Households?
Well, I mean, that's if you want to do a modest survey,
And that
then
can be-
that's
that's legitimate?
Yeah, and they'll give you plus or minus 5%.
500 out of a
something.
possible.
I know,
what,
it's not the-
17,000.
It's not the best. It's definitely not the best. Yeah. So,
Okay.
actually, just to throw in one little item here, just to round out the half hour, one of the committee reports had to do. Actually, two of them were related to transit.
Yes, better bus and also transit benefit.
Yeah, and I don't really understand what that
Transit
is.
benefit is geared, I think, towards, because I went to a little bit of it, corporations that give, they get a break if they give certain benefits to their employees, I think
Right.
that's what it is.
Well, you could argue that we do that to some degree now because
Well,
if you
MIT
want to,
does it, right?
well, if you want to get permitted to do a development project, you have to sort of make your case that you're actually
Yeah.
doing transit benefits in that way.
Right.
So you do get a benefit, namely you get your special permit for.
Yeah, I think this is
So-
more for commercial, but I could be wrong. I grabbed some stuff and I forgot
Yeah.
to give it to you.
Yeah.
I went to the tail end of that
Right,
meeting.
but the other one is to do with just
Better bus
the better
project?
bus. So
Yeah.
so the MBTA is in the process of
Yeah, it's
of
messed up.
proposing some alterations
yeah.
to the bus routes.
Yeah.
The one that I think is, they introduced these crosstown buses, CT1, CT2,
Yeah,
CT3.
right.
A few years ago, it was originally as to be a kind of an interim step on the road to the inner, what do they call it? The
Like a light rail?
yeah,
Or
so
it
yeah,
never-
and then
never
those
had
things
that.
never quite happened.
No.
So these interim measures were put in,
Oh.
and I don't know that the final
realize
measures will
that.
ever happen. So at some point,
Yeah.
you really should be taking some of those routes and integrating them in,
Because there's a
folding them
crosstown
in.
one and a two.
I
Yeah.
sometimes grab the CT1 coming up
Right.
from MIT just a short
Right.
distance, but it just ends at Central Square.
Oh, it does. I thought, which is the one that ends at Harvard?
And that's the Dudley bus. The number one bus goes all the way
Okay,
up.
all right.
So one of the proposals they say is, well, let's eliminate the CT1. We'll fold it into the number one bus and then make a few other changes to the number one bus and maybe have shorter headways between the, a little more frequency
I
of the
think James
buses.
Williamson brought up something about eliminating something would affect people that use it to go to the medical area.
Well, he actually
was-
suggested that mandating that the Harvard Medical School,
If they're gonna eliminate this certain
there's a
bus.
separate bus, but the thing is, they do
Right.
get some public subsidy for it, so that the
Yeah.
MBTA should, there should be at least some demand that bus be accessible to the
If
general
they
public.
eliminate a bus that people use now, wasn't that
I think
the
he was
case?
just lobbying for the idea, but I don't think that.
Oh, I thought
it's-
it was if you take this away, we're gonna need
But
something.
it's
so
the
why not?
MBTA doesn't run it, and trying to get the agencies to sort of come up with a mutual
Yeah.
solution is like pointless. It's not
Right.
going to happen.
Well, then
But,
just don't take away what people use now. That's what I heard, so maybe you didn't hear
Right.
that part.
So anyway, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
Some good ideas, some not so good ideas. So anyway, we'll see you in a few minutes on Cambridge Inside Out.